Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I bid to Dr. Marina and my fellow friends. Today, our group 10, will present about muscle contraction. This is my group members, which consists of Iman Hafizi, Siti Nur Aina Sofia, me myself, Nur Alia Batrisha, and lastly, Nur Farisha Kistina. First, let me introduce a bit about muscle contraction. Muscles are composed of contractile tissue that is capable of changing its length by contracting and relaxing. Most organisms rely on muscle tissue contraction to produce movement. Humans and other vertebrates have distinct types of muscle tissue, which are smooth muscle tissue, cardiac muscle tissue, and skeletal muscle tissue. In addition to movement, muscle contraction also fulfills some other important functions in the body, such as joint stability, heat production, and posture. Heat released by skeletal muscle contraction is distributed throughout the body to help maintain a constant body temperature. Let me pass to the next presenter so they can explain more about muscle contraction.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Siti Nur Aina Sofia, and today I will talk about microscopic anatomy and physiology. Without further ado, let's jump to the first point. 650 skeletal muscles and their associated tissue make up approximately 40% of the weight of an average human. A pound of muscle takes up less space than a pound of fat. It is because 50% of muscle tissue is more dense than fat. Before we move to the next slide, I just want to add one additional information about this topic, which is even at rest, muscle tissue consumes 3 times more energy than adipose tissue. Our hands is made up from upper arm and forearm bones. Both of these bones are jointed at elbow. Upper arm bone are covered with bicep muscles and triceps muscles. Forearm bones is connected to fibrous connective tissue, which is tendon. When we want to lift something with arm, our brain sends the signal to bicep muscle to contract and triceps muscle to relax. When biceps contract, its length decrease and bone attached to it get pulled. In this process, relaxation of tricep muscle occurs to make a movement. Pull force applied by muscles on bones is the cause of movement. When muscle at rest, it exhibits tone, which some of their fibers are contracting. Muscle tone is important in maintaining posture. Muscle spindle and Golgi tendon organs are sensory receptors that help to maintain tone. Before I pass my turn to the next presenter, I just want to share with you guys a fun fact about Botox. Did you know muscle tone is implicated in the formation of facial wrinkles by using Botox, which will interfere in muscle contraction, causing smooth wrinkles? Skeletal muscles need nerve impulse to do anything, so Botox works simply by blocking nerves from sending their messages to the muscle. At the nerve terminal, where the nerve and the muscle meet, the nerve would normally transmit the signal from the brain across the gap called the synapse and into the muscle. However, Botox blocks the release of the nerve signaling molecules called the neurotransmitter. This means that the muscle would never receive the signal from the brain and will never contract.
Assalamualaikum and hi everyone. So my name is Iman Hafizi, and now it is my turn to explain about microscopic anatomy and physiology. Alright guys, before we go deep into this topic, you guys really need to know about something that's very important to understanding in this subtopic. So first, we have sarcolemma. Sarcolemma is plasma membrane of a muscle fiber. Next, we have sarcoplasmic reticulum. Sarcoplasmic reticulum is smooth endoplasmic reticulum of skeletal muscle cell. And other than that, we also have myofibril, which is a specific muscle cell organelle containing a linear arrangement of sarcomere, which shorten to produce muscle contraction. And other than that, you need to know about sarcomere. Sarcomere is one of many units arranged linearly within a myofibril. Next, we have myosin. Myosin is muscle protein making up the filament in sarcomere. And lastly, we have actin, it is one of two major protein, is along with myosin, and same function with myosin, which is make up the filament in myofibril. Sorry, there are some correction. The function of actin and myosin is not same. Yes, both of them is make up the filament, but myosin make up the filament in sarcomere, while actin is make up the filament in myofibril. The joint skeletal muscle is composed of a number of muscle fibers in bundle. Each muscle fiber is a cell that containing the usual cellular component, but some of them may have a special feature. Okay, now let's move to the sarcolemma, or known as plasma membrane. The sarcolemma form a transverse system or T system. The T tubule penetrate or deep down into the cell, so they come in contact. But guys, do not fuse with the sarcoplasmic reticulum, which consists of expanded portion of modified endoplasmic reticulum. These expanded portions serve as storage sites for calcium ion, which are essential for muscle contraction. The sarcoplasmic reticulum encases hundreds and maybe sometimes thousands of myofibril, which are contractile portion of a muscle fiber. Myofibril are cylindrical and run the length of the muscle fiber. Did you know that under the light microscope, we may see that the myofibril has light and dark band termed striation. It is responsible for the skeletal muscle striated appearance. Meanwhile, under the electron microscope, we can see that the striation of myofibril are formed by the placement of protein filament within contractile unit called sarcomere. If we observe the sarcomere when it relaxes, it shows that a sarcomere extends between two dot lines called Z line. There are two types of protein filament. First, thick filament made of myosin, and one is made up of actin. The I band is light colored. The reason why it is contain only actin filament attached to a Z line. The dark region of a band contains overlapping actin and myosin filament, and its haze zone has only myosin filament.
My name is Nufarsha Kristina binti Muhammad Rusli, and my metric number is AS12412. I will explain about sliding filament models, but before that, I will show you the structure of muscle fibers. I will explain about sliding filament model. Muscle fibers are composed of many myofibrils. A myofibril contains contractile units called sarcomeres. Sarcomeres run adjacent to one another down the length of the myofibrils. Each of sarcomere consists of alternating thick and thin protein filaments, giving skeletal muscle its striated appearance. The muscle contracts when these filaments slide past each other. As you can see, the thick filaments are called myosin, which are anchored at the center of sarcomere called the M line. The thin filaments are composed of the protein actin, which are anchored to the Z line on the outer edges of sarcomere. Because the actin filaments are anchored to the Z lines, the sarcomere shortens from both sides when actin filaments slide along the myosin filaments. Although the action between these filaments is described as sliding, the myosin filament actually pulls the actin along its length. The cross bridge of the myosin filaments attach to the actin filaments and exert force on them to move. This action is known as the sliding filament mechanism of muscle contraction. So as you can see in this video, the myosin heads are like your hands, where they grasping, pulling, letting go the filaments and then repeating the process. So how muscle contraction begins? ATP supplies the energy for muscle contraction. Muscle contraction begins when a bound of ATP is hydrolyzed, or we call breaks down, to ADP and inorganic phosphate. This causes the myosin head to extend and can attach to the binding sites on actin, forming a cross bridge. An action called the power stroke is triggered, allowing myosin to pull the actin filaments toward the M line, thereby shortening the sarcomere. ADP and inorganic phosphate are released during the power stroke. The myosin remains attached to actin until a new molecule of ATP binds, freeing the myosin to either go through another cycle of binding and more contraction, or remain unattached to allow the muscle to relax.
Next, we are going to talk about the use of ATP in muscle contraction. There are four components of muscle contraction, which are actin filament, calcium ion, myosin filament, and ATP. First, I will state the function of each component. First component, which are actin filament, are used to slide past the myosin. This will cause contraction of the muscle. Second, calcium ion. Calcium ion is needed in order for the myosin to bind with actin. The third component, which are myosin filament, will pull actin filament to form cross bridges. This process is enzymatic and split ATP. Finally, for our fourth component, which is ATP. I think we all can guess what is the function of ATP. Well, ATP will provide energy needed for muscle contraction. For your information, cellular respiration does not immediately supply all the ATP needed, although muscle cell contains myoglobin, which is a molecule that stores oxygen. Muscle fibers rely on creatine phosphate. What is creatine phosphate? Well, creatine phosphate is a storage form of high-energy phosphate. Creatine phosphate cannot directly participate in muscle contraction. It anaerobically regenerates energy by the following reaction. These reactions occurs in the midst of sliding filaments. So, this method of producing ATP is the fastest. When all creatine phosphate is depleted, mitochondria may by then be producing enough ATP for muscle contraction to continue. If not, fermentation is the second way for muscle to supply ATP without consuming oxygen, known as oxygen depth. When oxygen depth occurs, lactate will build up, which will cause muscle ache and fatigue. That's